Welcome back to Carolina Journal Radio. I'm Donna Martinez. The Bass Night Bridge on the Outer Banks, which replaced the Bonner Bridge, is well known to most North Carolinians. But it turns out President Donald Trump also knows about this bridge. In fact, the president used the bridge as an example of oppressive federal rules that make building infrastructure like bridges very costly and very slow. Joe Coletti is senior fellow with the John Locke Foundation. He follows transportation issues and policy here in North Carolina, and he joins us now. Joe, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
Okay, so what'd you think when you hear President Trump talking about North Carolina and the Bass Night Bridge?
It's always weird to hear something positive from a Republican about Mark Bass Night, or from any, but sorry, but the president's commentary about it, that it took 25 years to build, to replace the Bonner Bridge, and a large part of that was due to environmental concerns and lawsuits and regulations and barriers to being able to replace that bridge. That all made sense, and so it's a very good thing for the president to be looking at how do we ease the regulatory barricades to building infrastructure, needed infrastructure, like the Bonner Bridge or the Bass Night Bridge, or like a new runway at RDU, a replacement runway at RDU. That's being held up by regulations. We've seen that with 540 and with other projects across the state.
So how do we go about that? Because on the one hand, there might legitimately be hurdles that a project needs to get over, but what's appropriate and what's inappropriate? How do we decide that?
Well, the existing law has been litigated for 50 years, as folks have pointed out. That from the time that it was created until today, that's 50 years worth of lawsuits from environmental groups trying to stop construction projects and infrastructure projects in the name of the law. And so the president's idea is to change some of the regulatory framework around that, to ease that. It still has to go through public comments and and so it'll be a while before it takes place. But once that happens, well, then we'll still have another round of lawsuits to figure out the answer to your question.
So while all that goes on at the federal level here in North Carolina, Joe, you know transportation issues just up one side, down the other here. Let's talk about some of the key factors that determine how we build roads and bridges and how we pay for them. First of all, there was a huge court ruling, and it was in relation to a law called the MAP Act in North Carolina, and this was determined to be unconstitutional. And it's important for this discussion because it was a key factor in how North Carolina planners really made their plans for building roads.
Right.
And they were negatively impacting property owners around the state. Give us kind of the Reader's Digest version of what the MAP Act was doing to property owners and why it's ruled unconstitutional.
Yeah, 1985, the legislature passed the MAP Act, which said that the Department of Transportation could put out a map, and everything along there would then be, but it wouldn't have to buy anything in the proposed route, until they were ready to actually build.
Which could be decades.
It could be decades, in part because of the environmental lawsuits, right? And what that did, though, is it froze the value of a person's house or diminished it. Because if you know that the house that you're looking to build or the property that you're looking to buy for commercial purposes too, is going to, at some point, be torn down and replaced by a road, there's not a lot of value there. And so the court said that that's a taking by the state. And that was part of the reason why they passed the law, was so that the Department of Transportation could pay less to condemn property and take it for their roads. And so it was in the intent, and the courts recognized that and said that that's unconstitutional. You can't do that. You have to pay just fair compensation. And so the Department of Transportation now has probably about $1 billion worth of liabilities to property owners. They've paid somewhere close to $300 million of that already, but still have another a large chunk of that still left. Unfortunately, the General Assembly this past December and bailing out the Department of Transportation over a number of other things also limited the amount that the department could pay in compensation to owners under the MAP Act to $150 million a year. So it'll be a number of years more before all of these owners are compensated for their taking.
Unfortunate if you are one of the victims
Right.
of the MAP Act. Okay, so the MAP Act can't be used. It's unconstitutional. What then are North Carolina planners using as the criteria for determining how we build roads or what is needed?
There's a state transportation infrastructure plan that is largely data-driven at the state level for large projects. And that's based on the traffic that's going to go through there and the value that's created from the road, and that's at the state level. The largest projects are that, and as you get closer to local level, there's more local input and less reliance on data, down to about half and half. Half just this makes sense, and half the data says this is what it should be. And so that's how most things are being planned now. There's still a question about how much land the Department of Transportation is taking for their projects, and if they're overbuilding compared to what they could do and should do to be able to maintain the commercial and residential character of the places where they're building.
So how do we pay for all of this?
Most of the money comes from gas taxes. 40% of the money comes from gas taxes, and most of the rest of it comes from other user fees from drivers. Sales tax on cars that you buy, driver's license, title, tags, all of those things come into the cost that we pay for roads and for most of the rest of the transportation system in the state.
That means that when we pull up to the gas station and we fill up the tank,
Right.
most of us just look at how much a gallon of gas costs. We don't realize that there's a nice little chunk of that actually is a federal gas tax and also state gas
Right.
tax that's part of the price of a gallon of gas. Here's the thing, Joe, and you've written a lot about this. We're going to more fuel-efficient cars. Now we have electric cars. Does that mean that our revenue is diminishing?
It has been diminishing. It has been diminishing for a long time. Actually, it went down further faster in the 70s than recently, because that's where the big fuel efficiency gains
Yeah,
were
the gas
most made.
guzzlers,
But efficiency has continued to improve. One of the things with electric vehicles and with hybrids is that those are high-end vehicles, and so the gas tax is actually becoming regressive because if you have an electric vehicle, if you have a Tesla, you're not paying the gas tax. So there's increasing concern across that, and the Department of Transportation has a commission that's looking at that and will have its recommendations early next year, in early 2021, on what should the revenue structure look like. And we've talked in the past about one of the ideas could be to do a mileage-based tax, so that you take a look at the weight of the vehicle, you take a look at how many miles it's driven, and you say that substitutes for the gas tax.
That's going to be interesting because a lot of people don't like that idea,
No.
but we've got to talk about some options and make some tough decisions
Right.
for going forward. That's why we rely on Joe Coletti, Senior Fellow at the John Locke Foundation. He does all of that analysis, which you can read at johnlocke.org. Joe, thanks very much.
Thank you.